Well, g'day folks, coming to you today from the backyard once again with a fairly interesting rifle. This is one of the 640,000 odd Lithgow-made, Australian-made rifles produced between 1912 and 1956. And indeed, there's a bit of a hint. This particular rifle is one of the very last. It's one of the 1,000 rifles that was 1953 dated, built between 53 and 56. A bit of a shorter video today. We might get a longer one with a lot more details about the story behind it, but this is just a bit of a look at this particular rifle, which is here thanks to the good offices of my mate Nick, and it's a very interesting rifle indeed. Having a bit of a look down at the rifle in a bit more detail, it looks like so many of the Lithgow built rifles, later production. It's got Slazenger coachwood furniture, fairly well oiled, so it's darker than one might initially expect. Parkerized metal, as was the norm during the Second World War, and a bit of something different that might be unfamiliar to some people, a yellow nose. There's a bit of a story behind those. From time to time we see, particularly here in Australia, rifles with a yellow nose. Sometimes you might see a green band around the butt, sometimes you might see red markings, and these are particularly Australian uses of colour to indicate the status or condition of particular rifles. To quote Mr. Scannerton, many 303 rifles were passed on to school cadet units after the introduction of the 7.62mm L1A1. These cadet units have more recently been the end-user source of surplus smelly rifles. Many such rifles have been noted with painted bands around the butts or the entire muzzle nose cap portion. Colours have been green, yellow and red. The green indicates approval for ball ammunition firing. The yellow is a second grade but still suitable for live firing, and the red indicates it was not to be fired. A white colour is an Air Force cadet equivalent for the Army's green or yellow. The Australian school cadets used 303 rifles for a very long time, and the scheme was only abolished in the early 1970s. My dad was a school student in the 1950s in Melbourne, Australia, and that's Stella. And there's Scannerton. And Dad tells me stories of being able to bring his rifle home on the train with him. He used it for various ceremonial functions. He told me about being a member of a catafalque party in the local parish church for some reason. I understand it could have been Anzac Day, but I didn't realise that they were doing that in the 1950s in the church. And there's Stella again. But the cadets were a great way of teaching young fellas the realities and the art of using these rifles. And so my dad, now in his early 80s, can still tell me some of the technical details of his time as a cadet under officer, particularly including such things as the stripping and reassembling of Bren guns. Wish we'd have had those in school. Now this is a 1953 dated rifle, and in relation to these rifles, Mr. Scannerton says, "The last batch of 1,000 No. 1 rifles was produced at Lithgow from 1953 to prove machinery and tooling, finishing with serial number F40580. These particular receivers are dated 1953, although the order, MA880, was not finally completed until 14th February 1956. So this one is kind of smack bang in the middle of the range with this serial number, and it is great to be able to show one of these rather rare rifles to you. So again, having a bit of a look down the rifle, it is fairly typical of the last breed, I suppose you'd say, of the Lithgow built No. 1 rifles. Slazenger timber, fairly plain, not too many markings on it. This timber, you can faintly read the Slazenger stamps, but I can't read the date on them. And some people I've spoken to with examples of these rifles have 44 dated timber, some have 50s dated timber, but I can't quite work out what this one is. I'm getting old and my eyes aren't fabulous. So typical late marked rear sight bed, rear sight arm and components. Same with the rear sight protector. And a brass inner band is typical. Would have been blackened, but whatever they used seemed to wear off, because quite a few of these rifles that I've seen with the brass inner band seem to have worn off fairly quickly. But don't ever polish them, because that's not how they were. And a bit of a look from the other side. Myself looking at it, and Stella's pretty interested in what's going on as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting rifle, and what I'm going to do at some point is a longer video with more of information about the reason for these rifles, with the proving of the machinery after the choice of the SLR, and what happened with the machinery afterwards. It's a bit of a story, and I seem to get conflicting information, which is why I'm not going to say too much now. You can see there that someone's had a crack some time ago at removing some of the paint, but I think it adds to the character. This paint was quite a late thing from what I understand, late 60s, and the cadet rifles were only removed with the cessation of the cadet system in the early 1970s. As you'd expect, the nose cap is numbered to the rifle, and it's got the drilled out holes in the foresight protector ears. Now, most people I've spoken with who either have or have seen and handled a few of these rifles tell me that the butts are either long or short. They seem to, I don't know whether the short and long butts were in a bin closer to where the rifles were being built, or whatever reason, but this one has the B stamp, which means it's a bantam butt, which is half an inch shorter than the regular butt, so that's about 11 inches from what I get. So yeah, just another little historic quirk about these rifles. So removing the rear handguard, there's various stamps which give a bit more information. We can see 254 indicating a February 54 dated barrel, and that's fairly consistent with being kind of in the middle of the range of production from 53 to 56. We see that there's the star on the Knox form, which from memory tells me that there's at some point slight rust or cut within the barrel itself, and the various Lithgow inspector stamps that you see on most of these rifles. And a 61 up there towards the nose cap, which I'm guessing was probably the school rack number. Just a bit more of the story. So yeah, another rifle that fills in some of the story of the production of these rifles here in Australia, and one that I'm delighted to be able to show to you all. So yeah, enjoy.